one more. Let's get into it. Pretty soon, eventually, once I get to like 2,000 episodes, I'm gonna be like Tony Robbins, and I'm just gonna do like a whole session of just loud clapping and music, and there's gonna be lights. There's gonna be background dancers. They're all gonna be clapping. It's gonna be something to see. Trust me. Let's get right into it. Sold Not For Sale podcast. Coach Colin here. We got defunding the police. Defunding the police. So we got Joe Rogan. He's going to be talking about how wild and ridiculous defunding the police was. Then we got Coleman Hughes talking about it in only a way that he can, super intelligently, bringing some numbers to the whole thing. And then Ben Shapiro is going to show us exactly what Coleman Hughes is talking about in regards to the fact that defund the police actually ended up hurting minorities. And it only really, all these things that happened in the wake of George Floyd really only helped black elites. Didn't really help the people whose businesses and cities and street blocks were destroyed. Didn't help those people much at all. Let's get into it right now. Don't forget about the new channel that I got, Coach Colin Media. I got Coach Colin News. We're uploading daily. About 2 to 4 episodes a day are coming out there. We already have a bunch of videos. We're trying to get to 1,000 subscribers. Help us out. Go to that channel. Hit the subscribe button just like this. Boom. That's all you got to do. Now, let's get into the Joe Rogan clip. Let's go. Right here. There we go.
Strange.
Yeah, it really is. And, I keep thinking this is about as crazy as it can get. And then I get up and
you see the NYPD dance team.
I haven't seen that.
Okay, here we go.
All right, you got to show me.
The NYPD in the middle of the craziest migrant crisis anybody's ever experienced, in the middle of places where you attack police officers, violently attack police officers, and you release with no bail. Like that, right back out on the street. This is the NYPD dance team. So they developed a dance team. You remember when you were a kid and you thought about the fall of the Roman Empire? And
Yep.
you were like, did they see it coming?
You think this is a clue? Is that what you're thinking?
If a bigger clue would be an alien landing on the White House lawn. That's the only thing bigger. This is insanity. The fact that they would put this on television. First of all, is this the news? What is this that they put this on, Jamie?
I think it's the New York news. Yeah.
Okay. Isn't there a lot of other shit that's the news that's like really important for people to know about right now?
You know what? I'll tell you, anything that lifts morale with law enforcement right now,
That's true.
You got to give them that. Anything that lifts their morale and bonds them, because they got the lowest morale ever, and I don't blame them.
I don't blame them either. This is not the solution, but they should be massively funded, not defunded. You should train them better. You should, if you've got all these situations with people, you got people that, how much training is involved today in this time of such a demand for police officers, right? Like they're trying really hard to get police officers. They should train them like they train Navy SEALs. It should be like a very difficult process to get through, and we should be very thankful that people are doing the job, and they should be rewarded and treated well.
You know what really drives me crazy about this defunding that went on, and of course I think everybody's decided that was like a either really bad idea or really poorly worded idea, either way. But listen, the last thing you want to do is try to get police officers to wear 3 or 4 different hats. You don't want them showing up saying, okay, I want to try to be a social worker and a psychologist and defuse all of this and all. A police officer should show up and enforce the law. If not, people are going to get shot and killed. Police officers should show up and suppress illegal activity, disarm people that are a threat, and after all that's done, then fine. Bring in somebody that is a social worker or whatever, but you don't want a police officer doing all of that stuff. They're there to do one job, and that is suppress illegal behavior, disarm dangerous people, and they need to do it as quickly and efficiently as they can. They don't want to do all that. They got one job.
Right.
And they need to do that one job and do it very well. And they don't need people in there saying, well, you need to kind of talk to them and you need to this, you need to that. I'm not saying be heavy-handed or badge heavy, but they need to do what they're there to do and then let other people come in behind them and try to do all the rest of the stuff. You don't want a cop doing 3 different jobs. You want them doing one job, and that's suppress illegal behavior, get it under control, and then let somebody else do everything else.
Yes. And you need money for that.
Of course you do.
You can't have defund the police and expect things to get better.
No.
The whole idea behind that is so insane.
It was, and let me tell you, the people that were yelling defund the police weren't speaking for the people they were protecting. In those neighborhoods, they didn't want less police.
No.
They didn't want less police. It was their businesses that were getting robbed, their businesses were getting burned down. They didn't want less police. And it's so often that these activists, and I call it tyranny of the fringe. I've written this new book we'll talk about, I'm sure, in due time. But I talk about tyranny of the fringe. These activists aren't speaking for the people they say they're speaking for. They're speaking for themselves. They like the camera. They like the attention. They're not speaking for the groups they supposedly are speaking for.
And it works. That's what's crazy. It's effective. And in this day and age, when it's attached to something like the idea of being a progressive or being a good person, being on the left, being a kind person, you go along with these things. And the next thing you know, you're supporting the wildest of the leftists. You're supporting Antifa. You're turning a blind eye to violent thugs. And this is how screwed up everything's gotten just over the last few years. It seems like 10 years ago, this is not possible.
No, and it's accelerating and not decelerating yet. But I'm beginning to sense that there's a pushback.
Oh, yeah.
Because I think they've made a serious miscalculation. They pushed so hard and so long that they've started to wake up middle America to the point that they're saying, wait a minute, what? That's not okay. When they start rewriting history, when they start rewriting science, when they start trying to get the government to co-parent with you, with your child, people start saying, okay, whoa, wait a minute. I didn't mind when you were running around here talking crazy, but now you're starting to get into my business. Like my grandmother used to say, now you've gone from preaching to meddling now.
Well, you know,
man, it's very true what he said about those activists. You know, and honestly, you have to kind of thank God that thank God those people weren't on the up and up, and that they started buying mansions and like hiring a friend for security and then giving him $1 million. Thank God they started doing that, because as soon as they started doing that, a lot of black people woke up. There are already black people who were woken up, right? Like, imagine you live in this, and I'm not even exaggerating. It's like a war-torn area in Chicago where these gangs are just so heavily armed and so active, just going wild every day. And then all of a sudden somebody's like, there should be less police. You're going to be like, what are you talking about? But if you're one of these people, and actually they're going to talk about it in this next clip I got, Coleman Hughes and Chris Williamson. But if you're someone who is already living in a nice neighborhood, you're going to be like, yeah, I see that. Because why? Because police always hurt black people? Yeah, I guess so. Less of them around will be better. No, that's insane. Imagine having less police around. Listen, I support police. I'm not like all gung-ho about cops or anything, but I definitely support them, and I definitely don't want less. Just think about defund the police. Think about no police and where that would leave us if there was just none. What would happen? It'd be lawless. Any gangs that are active in your area, they would become the authority quickly, like real quick. Militias would form real quick. You'd have to be paying this faction and that faction for protection. It would get real serious real fast. But it's never people who are at the lowest. Listen, it's either people who are involved. I mince my words here. It's either people who are involved in gang activity and illegal drug activity who want to see less police around because it makes what they do easier, or it's people who are so far from any trouble to begin with that they never even need police around. You live in a nice enough area, you never even see the police. So you're like, yeah, less of them. If they're too violent, yeah, sure, whatever. But believe you me, once things get active, once things get wild, the first thing you want is a police officer. 100%. Now, Coleman Hughes and Chris Williamson are going to talk about this a little bit. And then we're going to touch on what's going on with Trump. Because this whole defund the police thing, whether they realize it or not, these Democrats, this BLM that actually put it into action, this has actually pushed a lot of law enforcement towards Trump. Because in defunding the police, they tied their hands. They demonized them, tied their hands. People stopped wanting to become cops. People started retiring early. The force is starting to dwindle. And on top of that, if they do their job and they do what they're supposed to do, right away somebody's filming them, taking pictures, and then they have a police department and higher ups that get so scared of any bad press that they end up getting fired and they lose their pension. It's crazy what ends up happening. But we'll get into that story in a second. This is Coleman Hughes and Chris Williamson talking about defunding the police and how bad it was for minorities.
While at the same time, defunding the police for neighborhoods where Black people need them the most. Okay. At the time of the summer of 2020, Gallup polled Black Americans with 3 simple questions. Do you want more police in your neighborhood, the same police presence in your neighborhood, or less? 80% answered the same or more. Only 20% wanted less police. And that was the position, a very minority position within the Black community of the Black Lives Matter movement, the Defund the Police movement, and so forth. Police were defunded in many cities in America and then later refunded in many cases by popular demand within the Black community in certain places. And the end result was that 2020 represented the single greatest increase in homicide from year to year in America in the past 100 years. Okay. That is a shocking fact that most people don't know. And it was a direct result of the reaction to George Floyd's death, the depolicing, the mass retirement of the police, the general sentiment of anti-police. And it hurt nobody more than the Black community because those homicides were not equally distributed in nice neighborhoods unless they were highly concentrated precisely in communities that are disproportionately Black and disproportionately poor.
I taught Joe Rogan yesterday on his podcast about luxury beliefs that's been recently repopularized by Rob Henderson, and Defund the Police is patient zero for this. I mentioned that I was walking through Austin and saw a house that has a Defund the Police placard in the garden and a private security sticker next to the front door in the window.
Yeah. The fact that people like that don't see the irony is really depressing to me. I mean, there are literally people that have their own private security detail, okay, who supported Defund the Police. There are people in gated neighborhoods who pay a premium just so that strangers can't come near their house, not even in their house, but near their house, who want to gut police forces in that are, for poor neighborhoods. This is amazing. And that's what happened in 2020. And more importantly, that's what can happen in particular in America on the left, when people only obey their empathy towards a video and suspend the rational thought that should come with that. Okay, this video is horrible. Let's all agree that. What is actually the best way to move forward? Let's not just rage. Let's actually think, look at evidence, and not be so hasty with supporting policies that might backfire for the very people you're trying to help.
I think it would have been very difficult during the summer of 2020 to have put out realistic crime impact statistics, what the actual polls are saying from mostly Black neighborhoods. I think anyone that posted that, it would have been very quickly lambasted as some white supremacist, race denial, you don't care, you don't understand, you don't know. That would have been the smart thing to do, but the incentives all aligned to not have, I mean, who was going to be the person that does that? If it was a Black person, they'd be accused of being an Uncle Tom.
Right.
If it was a white person, they'd be accused of being a racist.
Right.
There was no vector in which that narrative could have inserted itself, I don't think.
Yeah. I mean, Sam Harris tried to. I think he released like a 90-minute audio
pull
essay.
Back from the Brink?
Yeah, Pull Back from the Brink, which was very good.
One of the best, for the people that haven't listened to it, even now, it is one of the best like monologues I think that I've ever heard. That thing is phenomenal.
It was spot on in my view. And I'm sure he took a lot of flack for it. As my friend Camille Foster likes to say, people like me and Camille have the melanin force field, which is, no one is going to call me a racist. As you say, they may call me an Uncle Tom or a traitor to my community and so forth, to which I would respond, what could be more of a betrayal to your community than not speaking out when you know that policies are being adopted that are going to lead to potentially hundreds or thousands of excess deaths for Black people? Because that's what happened.
The internet is obsessed with the prioritization of looking good over doing good.
Mm-hmm.
Completely obsessed with it, because the distance between our opinions and our deeds have never been greater. So it's very easy to hide behind words that sound caring and just and forthright and charitable and understanding. And the implications of it, what actually happens, kind of, no one really ever fact checks that. It's, he was the guy, and I'm sure he had good intentions. Who could have foreseen that defunding the police would have negatively impacted Black people? Well, I don't know, if you'd used a little bit of sort of second order thinking.
Mm-hmm. A lot of people foresaw it. A lot of people talked about it at the time, me included. But mostly we were ignored because of the frenzy around the moment. I mean, it's very interesting to live through a moment that I think will be written about by historians.
Yeah.
We're fairly close to the same age. We haven't gotten too many of those, I think, but it will. The summer of 2020, we have to acknowledge what happened. A man died in police custody in a city, Minneapolis, not one of the cities, frankly, that is known by non-Americans. And there were protests, not just in America, all around the world.
London?
Everywhere. Even places that didn't speak English. Everywhere. South America, Canada, UK, probably Australia. It's crazy. Luxury beliefs. That's what I was trying to get across. He just framed it perfectly. It's a luxury belief for most people to defund the police. Because they're private security, you got an alarm system, maybe even have a, firearm, this, that. You're good. So you're like, sure, whatever they want. Is it what they want? More importantly, is it against what Trump wants? If Trump's yelling law and order, then I have to yell chaos. That happens quite a bit. Way more than people want to acknowledge. That if Trump is saying, hey, we need law and order, there are a bunch of people who are like, we need anything but law and order right now. It's absolutely ridiculous. You're going to hear something for a second because there's just a clip that I want to pull up. Hold on 1 minute here.
Defunding the police.
Just touches on something that they were talking about here. This is Candace Owens, and when they were talking about the homicide rates going up, Candace Owens and a panel of people actually touched on this really quick. I just want to show you guys this because when the homicide rates went up, all those people who were screaming about defunding the police, they had a very odd take of who was at fault for all of this. I just want to play this for you guys real quick.
There has been a violence increase in inner cities, clearly the result of this defund the police initiative that Democrats were just raving about. So here's the thing, though. Now they've switched it and they flipped it like they do, and they say it's actually our fault. I guess we should, let's just start with this video of Jen Psaki answering why this is happening, why the homicide rates in large cities are up more than 30% in a year, and it's just absurd.
Part of his announcement is also ensuring there's specific guidance to communities across the country to ensure that they have funding to get more community police around the country. Something that was supported by the American Jobs Plan that was voted into law by Democrats just a couple of months ago. Some might say that the other party was for defunding the police. I'll let others say that, but that's a piece.
I'm trying to comprehend just lying with a straight face like that. It's weird. It's like nobody can believe it. Even if you're the most radical Democrat, if you're just a radical leftist, you know that Republicans are the party of law and order and have done everything that we possibly can to stop this defund the police movement.
Yeah, Eric Swalwell said the same thing, that Republicans were against the police. And you can tell by that video that she has never talked to a police officer in her life. I just went on a ride-along in South Central LA, and I talked to real police officers who are working in one of the worst neighborhoods in the United States, and all they can tell me is about how bad it's gotten since they've cut the budget, and they have less resources, and how there's more crime, more shootings, more prostitution, because there are less police. This is exactly what happens when you defund the police. Everything gets worse.
Absolutely. I mean, I sat in Los Angeles during summer of 2020 and watched people tear the streets apart, essentially, while on the news at that moment. There was a caster saying, well, one man's riot is really another man's protest. It all depends on the language that you use, right? So, I mean, they know we know they're lying. They do not care. They do it over and over again. But this is my question for you guys. Does this mean that they're caught? Do you know what I mean? Like, defunding the police is suddenly a bad thing now because it so obviously leads to... It's the same thing with CRT, right? We call them out on this. We call them out on teaching racism to children, indoctrinating them into this. And then they say, well, what's CRT really? It doesn't really exist. I sort of feel as if this means they know that if they hold to this line, they'll be caught.
Let's just look at one more big liar on this. I want to get to Joy Behar because it's incredible. I think this is really quite fascinating. Let's see what she has to say about this.
Every president since Clinton inherited basically a declining crime rate, and then it continued to decline until Trump came along, because Trump presided over the greatest crime rise in modern American history. The murder rate shot up 26%, and mass shootings spiked. Hate crime spiked more than 20% during his presidency. Now, I don't want to lay the whole thing at his feet, but he did create 4 years normalizing crime.
This is incredible. And here's the best part. She keeps looking off to the side like she's reading a teleprompter. Like, it's almost like they just decided on messaging and all of them got the message overnight. And it's like, we're just going to say, okay, it's the Republicans. We got caught, so let's just blame the Republicans. Has there ever been a president that was more pro-police than Donald Trump? Yes, crimes rose because you guys supported the George Floyd nonsense. I mean, this is crazy.
Yeah. My God, I want to scream listening to these people who are either the most evil or the dumbest people on planet Earth. They know for a fact that they were yelling, defund the police, dismantle the police. They've seen the decline in law enforcement. They've seen people walk off the police department. They've seen morale go to the tanks, and that has directly resulted in crime going out of the roof. Now the people are yelling at them, and they want their heads now because their communities are destroyed, and then they want to pivot and say this had everything to do with Donald Trump. There is a bigger agenda here, and I feel like they want to eradicate local law enforcement so they can make law enforcement in this country federalized. So when they come for you and say you better put a mask on, local police don't have to abide by that, but if it was federalized, they will. When they come for you, senile Joe Biden want to take away magazines from the AR, they're going to enforce those things federally.
I hope you guys are enjoying the...
Wow, Officer Tate, I didn't even know he was in the video. I let it run so long because I was like, is he going to talk? That's so funny. I didn't even realize that. But yes, they switched it up completely. As they saw the rates rise, as they realized what was done, they decided, okay, we need to just walk away from this and just put it on them. It's absolutely amazing. I mean, what was it? The mayor of Chicago talking about the summer of love. These aren't riots. It's just the summer of love. That car's not on fire. It's just orange. What's wrong with you? Get some glasses. You know, it's really interesting the way they jumped away from it. And again, Officer Tatum, I didn't even know he was going to say that, but that is a great theory because it does seem like they were trying to get rid of local law enforcement. They were doing everything except firing them en masse. Everything but just government just coming and saying this whole precinct's gone, this is gone, that's gone. They just kind of tied their hands, made their job so uncomfortable, made them so demonized that there was a lot of them that just kind of walked away from the job. They're like, I have 10 years from retirement. I'm just going to get my pension now. Because if I do anything wrong, my higher ups are going to look at me and they're going to say, you're fired, and then I'm going to lose my pension. So I might as well just step into it early and not collect as much. Like, I'd rather that. So that happened to a whole bunch of people. And then there's probably a whole bunch of people who were young and decided not to step into that type of career. I mean, what else are you going to do? And honestly, it's funny that they were saying all this because I just did a video on this. The Michigan Police Department, now the president of the Police Officer Association of Michigan, he just made sure to have Donald Trump come to Grand Rapids, and he gave Donald Trump his full endorsement. And he said, the last time you were president, we fully endorsed you. You've always had our backs, and we need a president that's going to have our backs. Because they were like, right now we're in a state where people are pulling us back. They're not allowing us to do our job. And Donald Trump was talking about wanting to give them immunity. This is exactly the opposite of what they're saying and what was done with Defund the Police. Donald Trump is trying to make it so they are immune, which not everybody agrees with. That's going to be a very torn topic. You don't want people to be completely immune. You want them to have some responsibility, and you want them to operate properly. It's a whole discussion in and of itself, but that is something Donald Trump's fighting for because the pendulum swung so far the other way that their hands are completely tied. And again, it's so terrible for the minorities, and it's so terrible for the people in the community. In the Michigan Police Department, Grand Rapids, Michigan, that area, they were all talking about how, I think he said, out of, I think, 10% of the people, out of 40% of people who are incarcerated, 10% of them are from Mexico or Guatemala. It was something like that. But it's a large population of them are illegal immigrants. And they're starting to notice now that drugs are running rampant because a lot of the people who are getting over are also bringing drugs. So he was talking about how, an amount, we'll say, of meth or, whatever drug comes in ball, don't want to get too descriptive, but 3.5 ounces went from $400, I think he said, down to $85 because it's everywhere now, which is wild. That's terrible, because all that's going to do is prompt people to do even more because they're going to have even more, and they spent, a quarter of the money to get it. And then who knows what that has in it, and the next thing you know, you got fent overdoses left and right. It's really, really bad. So Defund the Police was a complete sham. I got one more video here. Ben Shapiro found a great clip of somebody, the exact example of what Chris called luxury beliefs. Perfect example. Here it is.
Yesterday, Cory Bush was doing an interview, and she declared that she wanted to defund the police. But she didn't just say that. She said, I pay for security. I have taxpayer-funded security. I need security. But you, the regular people, you don't need police. We should defund the police.
I'm going to make sure I have security because I know I have had attempts on my life and I have too much work to do. There are too many people that need help right now for me to allow that. So if I end up spending $200,000, if I spend $10 more on it, you know what? I get to be here to do the work. So suck it up, and defunding the police has to happen. We need to defund the police and put that money into social safety nets because we're trying to save lives.
So in the exact same sentence where she says that she deserves $200,000 of security, she says that you should not have security. Why are the Democrats following this? And here's the...
Why are they following this? It's interesting. I think Officer Tatum's point was great. You get it federalized and it becomes a real problem. But I think it's more, Coleman Hughes, in the clip that I was playing of him, he talked about how historians are going to write about this. And I don't know how they're going to write about this, but I think it might be something along the lines of, remember back in the day where there was some kind of secret coup going on, when there was some kind of secret attack going on. I think it's going to be along those lines. I don't think it's just going to be regular history. I think it's going to be shown that it was a very shady time and there was a lot of people that were co-opted and they were working together in secret to have certain things happen. And everything they did took power away from the people and put more power into their hands. I think that's what it's going to sound like. But anyways, guys, defund the police. Do not forget about that second channel. I'm breaking away from the Rogan content in Coach Colin Media. Bunch of videos there already. Hit that subscribe button. I put a link in the description. Last time I said I would, and I forgot. This time I'm going to put the link in the description. And other than that, I'm out. Share.